You guys, it seems every year have one of these. You open the season with one of these kind of made for TV, big game type things. Could you kind of talk? I mean, it's Alabama this year. Could you talk about just the excitement?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, we like to, it's great for your team. I think it gets their attention in the off season. I think it makes your summers better, your fall camps better, even your spring is better. And I think it also puts things in perspective where you're at. I mean, like I said, we played quite a few of these games. Of course, Alabama's the biggest one, but it'd be the biggest one for them too, coming the other way. So I think it's good for college football. I think it gives you a measuring stick of where you're at on the season, and that's one of the reasons you come to Florida State, to be able to play in these marquee games, and then also market your school, market recruiting, everything that goes on.
The old analogy is you make the most improvement between the first and second games. Is it kind of tough when the first game is that one, and for them too? Is it kind of tougher to look at it?
Well, I don't know. Well, I think you'll find out about yourself. I think it's when reality really hits after the first game. But I think a lot of guys that happens. The old schedules were you started out easy and worked out the other way. It's kind of flipping around. So I don't know if that's still a true statement anymore. But anytime you play early, any of those early games, I think the adjustments and seeing who your team is, and understanding also your first time you get to see so many young players that have had different responsibilities, and you're able to make those adjustments. I think that's why people see the improvements, because now you get an actual game to look at a guy, what he can't do, what he can handle, what he can't handle, and kind of can call the game, whether it's offense, defense, special teams, or game plan around that type. And I think that's why you see so much improvement.
You got. I was going to say, the ACC announced that Alabama is a primetime game, Miami's a primetime game. I know it's not anything new for you guys, but to have 2 out of the 3 first games, so what does that say about where the program's at?
Florida State. I mean, that's what you want to be in. I mean, the primetime, we're the most televised team in the country since 1996. We're the winningest team in the country since 1980. In the last 7 years, we won the second most games in the country. We play in big games, and I think it's a great analogy if you can get through the schedules. For the way the playoff is set up now, and playing in big bowl games and major, playoff games, you get used to that atmosphere and environment. I think it's very, very important. But and we're supposed to have a good team. They're supposed to have a good team, and that's where you want to be. That's why you want to come to Florida State.
In recent years, you guys last couple of years have gone in with kind of an experience at quarterback, and a lot of the teams in the ACC have had experience. Now a lot of those guys are gone, and you've got the experience. What's the difference in preparation when you have a quarterback?
Well, I think how he handles situations. How he's going to react to getting hit, to throwing a bad pass, or making a good play. Can he maintain? Can he sustain? And you got to gauge for where he's at. But at the same time, you got to be careful that just because the guy's experience doesn't always mean that's going to be a great thing. He has to keep improving and doing things better, which our guy with DeAndre has done a tremendous job of that, in my opinion, in the offseason. But I think it gives you a better gauge of how to set things up for what he can and cannot do, and play to his strengths a lot more, because you actually have game footage and game time to adjust those calls.
How big are these months for DeAndre as he kind of steps up to be the leader of the team, getting organized 7-on-7s, that kind of stuff? Is this an important stretch?
Doubt, because it says your demeanor, your competitive nature, and guys, like I say, I always say this. That's why I like having guys choose our team in the spring. I like to sit back and see what they think of each other, because I've never been around. Everybody on the team knows who you want to play with, who you can trust, who will compete, who will play. And I think a lot of those things are done behind closed doors of coaches. I mean, you get them on the practice field and that, but the relationships and who's willing to grind and work behind those doors, and the players know and respect that. And I think that's big for him, which I think he did a great job this year. And he's always been a grinder now. He's a worker. So from that standpoint, I think it will be big. I think just for those relationships, and like you say, where the coach can't be there, and that's, to me, that's where the nuts and bolts of your team really come together. And I think it'll be very important for him, and I think he'll do a great job at it.
You mentioned the first game you learned a lot about the guys. He got hit a lot last year in the first game. What did you learn from him just about getting back up?
Competitor. And, and I think that takes a demeanor of your football team. You go back and think about it. Christian Ponder, people have no idea the injuries and pain he played with. He had his senior year, he had I don't know how to describe it. We would take 300 to 500 cc's of fluid off his elbow after every game. His arm was purple, throwing arm. I mean, it would sag to here. I've never seen anything like it. Played a whole season like it. Our team played like it. E.J. Manuel plays down here in the Champs Bowl in Orlando, plays the whole second half and brings him back with freshman offensive line with a broken leg. Could have walked out, had 4 freshmen in front of him, didn't walk out, played, set a precedent for what we're going to do. Jameis Winston played almost his whole sophomore year with a high ankle sprain that he couldn't even hardly run. Played probably 9 games with it. Never missed a practice, never missed. and the demeanor of your team. And I think DeAndre understands that. The team takes a personality of its quarterback, the toughness, the competitiveness of it, and finding him and finding out that he could do that was big. And I think that's a huge part of it. And those guys, when those guys are the guys that are willing to stand there and take shots, play banged up, play bruised up, it's hard for another guy on the team not to do it. And he just carrying on a long tradition of competitive guys that we've had and been blessed to have.
Where's he most improved at this point now from this point last year?
Well, we'll find out when fall comes, but I think understanding where he's at mentally as far as how important it is to, I mean, you're tough, I'm physical, I can run, I can make all the throws, but I think the game is starting to even slow down for him, and he can be that much more cerebral in how he makes decisions. The speed that he can make the decisions, get the checks in, see what's going on, process that much more information that much more quickly, which makes the game slow down and allows him to make even better decisions, which helps your accuracy, which helps everything that goes on, and also getting in and out of the right place for the guys around him when he does his checks and things like that, so they have more time to recognize and make the calls they got to do. And I think just the cerebral and understanding that the game from the neck up is really where it's won.
I think every year there's a couple seniors that step up, and I think you kind of say like light bulb kind of turns on for them. Are there any guys that coming out of the spring that you kind of saw that urgency started to come in?
I think Ricky Leonard's coming in that regard, without a doubt. I think Brock Rubel has. I think Derek Noddy, even though he played the red, I mean, it's really coming on for him. I see him doing that. Of course, Trey has been doing it. Derek and Matthew. I saw Matthew the second half of last year. Because people forget he hadn't played for 2 years. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, everything started slowing down, and he saw that. I mean, at the end of the season, man, he's making plays all over the field. And athletically, he's crazy athletic, and he had 15 tackles in the Orange Bowl. I mean, those are guys that kind of jump out at me in that regard that way.
What would you say to NFL teams that passed up on Dalvin in the first round?
Well, I mean, you don't. Everybody has their own reason or their own need, and just because a guy, just like in recruiting, we can't recruit all the. There's too many. There's a bunch of players that we won't be able to recruit that are going to play in the NFL. You got to make choices based off your team. I mean, do I think Dalvin's unique? Yes. Do I think he'll have a great pro career? Yes. Do I think he's a very special player? Yes. But the thing, each guy has to evaluate where he fits, and I mean, they have their own reasons for doing what they do, and life's about choices. And sometimes, but other priorities have to take precedent over that. But I know Minnesota's a very lucky team. They'll be happy to have him. I was blessed to have coached him for 3 years. One of the greatest players I've ever had the chance to work with, not just physically, but competitively, psychologically, mentally. A great teammate. I mean, just, did all the things you wanted to do. And I think Minnesota will feel the same way.